Okay, today we're going to learn how to make a doublet. A doublet is opal, a generally very thin piece that is bound to black or dark backing material, and the result, if it's done correctly, is something that looks very much like black opal. This piece of opal is about 2.2 millimeters thick, and this is much thicker than most people use to make doublets. One essential quality of the opal is that it has to be clear. You can see the white index card in the background. This is very clear even at 2 millimeters thick. I tend to make thicker doublets than most people. I guess most would say that's a waste of money, but I like my results, and I like the thicker piece of opal. I wrote on this index card that this is opal. Here it is. But the reason I wrote that on there is to show you that this is very, very transparent. It's, in essence, what's known as crystal opal. Although it's 2 millimeters thick, we can see straight through it, and it's already thin enough to be used for a doublet. We're going to glue the opal onto black or dark colored backing material. Most of the time, doublets are made with a backing of ironstone, which is very dark brown and is essentially black. I personally use black novaculite, which is from Arkansas in the U.S. It's known for sharpening stones. Sharpening stones are made out of black novaculite. One can also use onyx, black onyx, of course, obsidian, black obsidian, or even black potch, like the potch from Lightning Ridge. The reason I don't use obsidian, I have used it before, but the reason I do not use that or potch anymore is because I believe that one of the purposes of making a doublet to begin with is to give the opal strength. Black potch is the same, basically has the same breaking strength. It's fragile, just like opal. The same goes with obsidian. It's volcanic glass, it's fragile. Ironstone is very, very, very hard, and novaculite is also hard, as is onyx. It's not really hardness, it's really durability. Will it break if I drop it? Of course, that wasn't a very good distance. You can see that the surface of this is perfectly flat, and this is the most important thing that you need to know before attempting to make a doublet, is that the surface, one surface of the black backing needs to be perfectly flat, and one surface of the opal also needs to be perfectly flat. If they're not perfectly flat, you're not going to be happy with the results. You might get bubbles. It won't adhere correctly. So they need to be perfectly flat. And the only way to make something perfectly flat is, this is an example of a flat lap. This is a 100 mesh or grit. That's the coarseness of it. I personally I sometimes use 100. I use 100 to 300 grit or mesh for the coarseness, but it has to be perfectly flat. When it's held against this flat surface for a period of time, it will become flat. And so a flat lap is absolutely essential. Don't think that you can use your lapidary wheel to make a doublet. You can try it, and you can think that you've got something perfectly flat, but I guarantee you, you will not get it perfectly flat. The back of this piece of Novaculite is perfectly flat. You can see a little bit of the grain of the grinding wheel. I'm going to take this to the grinder. This is done with 100 mesh on my 100 mesh flat lap. I'm going to go back and I'm going to make it not only perfectly flat but perfectly smooth, and I'm going to use the 300 grit wheel, flat lap, not a wheel, flat lap. This is the Novaculite after grinding it flat on the flat lap. That's of 300 mesh. 300 mesh is about right. You can see there are some scratches, but the scratches are there to allow the epoxy to have a greater surface area to adhere to. So we don't want the surface to be completely smooth. If I wanted it to be completely smooth, I'd polish it. But I would recommend 250 to 300, but 100 will also work fine. I've got a slight convexity to the surface, and I've gotten the back about as flat as I can get it with the naked eye on wheels. So now I need to get the back perfectly flat with a flat lap. So how do we do that? Well, we can just go put it on the flat lap as I did with Novaculite, but there's a way to know if your opal is perfectly flat. There's a reason I have these gloves on. Well, two reasons. One, my fingers aren't particularly beautiful, but the main reason is because this is how we're going to get the back of it black. We're going to use a black marker. And we're going to cover the surface with. Right, now this will do two things. It will let us gauge how flat the specimen is, but it will also give you some idea of what your doublet may look like once it has the black backing. I'm going to go to the flat lap and I'm going to grind the surface, and I will show you how that works. You can hear the grinding wheel in the background. This is after a first pass on the flat lap. You can see that the central portion is flat, but the marker is still on the other parts. Here's an intermediate step. A lot of the back is flat, but there are parts that are not yet flat. Now we can see that the great majority of the marker has been removed from the back, and the back is now just about perfectly flat.